Vấn đề nằm ngay đây. Chỉ cần siết chặt lại là được.
Ồ, ra vậy. Cảm ơn em.
The wrench slipped from my oil-slicked fingers, clattering against the engine block like a gunshot in the quiet suburb. And in that split second, I swear the world tilted. Jordan's hand shot out to steady me, his touch lingering just a beat too long on my forearm, warm and electric against the chill of the October air. "Easy there. Alex," he murmured, his voice low and ragged, like he'd been holding back a storm, and those 3 words cracked open something in me I didn't know was sealed shut. I'd always prided myself on being the guy who fixed things, engines, leaky faucets, the occasional shattered heart of a buddy nursing a breakup over cheap beer. At 28, with calluses etched into my palms from years wrenching on cars at the local garage in Elmwood, Ohio, I figured I'd seen enough busted parts to recognize when something was irreparably wrong. But that afternoon, as the sun dipped low over the maple-lined streets, casting our shadows long and tangled across his driveway, I never imagined the real breakdown would be mine. Jordan had moved in next door 3 months earlier, a quiet ripple in our sleepy neighborhood of white picket fences and backyard barbecues. He was the kind of neighbor who waved from his porch with a half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The sort who left homemade apple pie on your doorstep after a rough day, but vanished before you could thank him. 30 years old, with that effortless grace that made him look like he'd stepped out of one of those indie films about lost souls finding their way. He ran the little bookstore downtown, the Page Turner, tucked between the diner and the hardware store. Folks said he was from the city. Chicago, maybe, escaping some big-shot life for the slow burn of small-town pages and coffee stains. I didn't pry. Prying wasn't my style. But God, those blue eyes of his, they'd snag you like a loose thread, pulling until you unraveled. It started innocently enough, as these things do. His old Ford Mustang, a '67 classic with more rust than polish, had coughed its last in the driveway that morning. I'd heard the sputter from my kitchen window while nursing my second coffee, black and bitter like the regrets I tried to drown with it. By noon, he was out there, hood propped open, staring at the guts like they held the secrets to the universe. I couldn't just watch. Grabbing my toolbox from the garage, I ambled over, the gravel crunching under my boots like bones underfoot. "Hey, neighbor," I called, leaning against the fender with what I hoped was casual nonchalance. "Looks like she's throwing a tantrum. Mind if I take a peek?" Jordan straightened, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, leaving a smudge of grease like war paint. His chambray shirt clung to his shoulders in the humid breeze, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms dusted with faint freckles. "Alex, right? Yeah. I'd owe you my firstborn if you could coax her back to life." His laugh was soft, self-deprecating, but there was a flicker in his gaze, gratitude laced with something heavier, like relief at not being alone. We dove in, the ritual of repair pulling us close in the confined space under the hood. The engine smelled of hot metal and forgotten oil, a scent that grounded me, reminded me of simpler fixes. I pointed out the frayed timing belt, the culprit snarling like a betrayed lover, and he nodded, handing me tools with a synchronicity that felt too easy, too right. Our elbows brushed, shoulders bumping in the narrow arc of the engine bay, and each contact sent a jolt through me I chalked up to static from the dry air. Lies we tell ourselves, right? To keep the world spinning steady. As I torqued the new belt into place, the conversation meandered like the creek behind our houses, lazy at first, skirting the banks. He asked about the garage, how long I'd been turning wrenches since high school, dodging the draft of college like so many guys from Elmwood. I asked about the bookstore, the stacks of dog-eared paperbacks that smelled of vanilla and dust. "It's my sanctuary," he said, voice dropping as he peered into the carburetor. "A place where stories get to breathe without judgment." There was that undercurrent again, swirling just beneath the surface. I felt it in the way his fingers trembled slightly when our hands met over a spark plug, in the pause before he spoke, as if weighing every word against some invisible scale. The sun was sinking now, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange. And the neighborhood had gone still. The kids called in for dinner, dogs settling into their yards. Just us, two men elbow deep in machinery, the world narrowing to the hum of crickets and the distant call of a train. Then, as I wiped my hands on a rag, leaning back to test the ignition, he said it. We were both half under the hood, faces inches apart in the dimming light, his breath warm against my cheek. "You know, Alex, this car, it's all I have left of him." The words hung there, raw and unfiltered, slipping out like they'd been trapped too long. Him. Not it. Not the engine, a person. My heart stuttered, the key in my hand forgotten as the Mustang roared to life beneath us. A guttural purr that drowned out everything but the ache in his voice. I turned my head, our eyes locking in that shadowed space, and saw the fracture lines in his composure, the way his jaw clenched, the sheen of unshed tears catching the last rays. "My brother," he whispered, the confession tearing free. "He taught me to drive it. Back when we were kids stealing smokes and dreaming of getting out. Died last year. Overdose. And I couldn't save him. Just like I can't save myself from pretending anymore. Pretending." The word landed like a spark on dry tinder, igniting questions I'd buried deep. Jordan's gaze held mine, fierce and fragile, and in that moment, under the hood of a car that had carried ghosts across state lines, I saw him, not the polite neighbor with the perfect smile, but a man unraveling, thread by thread. Gay, I realized with a clarity that stole my breath. Out here in Elmwood, where Sunday sermons still whispered about sin and picket signs fluttered at pride parades 20 miles away, coming out wasn't a declaration, it was a detonation. I didn't pull away. Couldn't. Instead, my hand found his shoulder, squeezing through the thin fabric of his shirt, feeling the rapid thud of his pulse mirroring my own. "Jordan," I said, my voice rougher than the gravel underfoot, "you don't have to pretend." Not with me. The admission burned my throat, because in saying it, I was cracking my own facade, the straight-laced mechanic who'd dated women in high school to fit the mold, who'd ignored the pull toward locker room glances and late-night wonders. But here, in the dying light, with the engine's rumble vibrating through us like a shared heartbeat, truth felt less like a risk and more like oxygen. He exhaled, a shaky sound that bordered on a sob, and leaned into my touch, his forehead resting briefly against my temple. The contact was seismic, a quiet earthquake shifting the ground beneath us. We stayed like that, the world blurring at the edges, until the Mustang's idle smoothed to a steady thrum. When we finally emerged, wiping grime from our faces, the air between us had changed, charged, alive with possibility and peril. That night, As I walked back to my empty house, the porch light flickering like a hesitant beacon, I couldn't shake the echo of his words. Pretending. What had I been doing all these years? Grease under my nails and loneliness in my chest. Jordan's confession wasn't just his. It was a mirror, reflecting back the parts of me I'd bolted shut tighter than any engine block. Sleep came fitful, haunted by blue eyes and the scent of oil mingled with his cologne, something woodsy, like pine after rain. The next morning dawned crisp, leaves skittering across the lawn like whispered secrets. I was under my own truck, bleeding the brakes, when I heard footsteps. Looking up, there he was, 2 steaming mugs in hand, steam curling like question marks. Coffee, he offered, that half-smile back, but softer now, laced with nerves. I took the mug, our fingers brushing again, and damn if it didn't feel like fate's cruel joke or its kindest gift. We sat on his porch steps, the Mustang gleaming in the driveway like a trophy of survival. Conversation flowed easier now, barriers chipped away by yesterday's rawness. He told me about Chicago, the glittering anonymity of it, the underground clubs where he danced until dawn, hands in hands that weren't ashamed. But after Ben, my brother, everything felt tainted. Like love was just another fix I couldn't kick. His voice cracked on the word love, and I wondered if he heard the echo of it in my silence, the way my knee pressed against his, accidental but not. I shared scraps of my own story, halting at first. The high school girlfriend who'd cried when I couldn't perform. The college roommate whose laugh had lingered too long in my dreams. I thought it was a phase, I admitted, staring into the black depths of my coffee. Elmwood doesn't exactly hand out rainbows. But yesterday, hearing you, it was like waking up. His hand covered mine then, deliberate, thumb tracing a slow circle over my knuckles. The touch seared, awakening nerves I'd numbed for years. Alex, he breathed, turning to face me fully, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that made my pulse thunder. What if we stopped waking up alone? The kiss that followed was inevitable, a collision born of pent-up longing. His lips were soft, tasting of coffee and salt from unshed tears. And I poured into it everything I denied, the hunger, the fear, the fierce joy of finally claiming what felt true. We broke apart gasping, foreheads pressed together, the world reduced to the birdsong and the wild beat of our hearts. But even in that bliss, shadows loomed. I could feel them in the way he tensed at a passing car's honk, in the flicker of his gaze toward the street where Nosy misses. Hargrove watered her petunias. We spent the day tangled in tentative exploration, lazy walks through the autumn woods behind our houses, hands clasped when the paths narrowed, stolen kisses against tree trunks rough with bark. He showed me his bookstore after closing, to shelve a labyrinth of worlds we'd both hidden in. We read passages aloud, voices overlapping in laughter and hushed awe, until the words blurred and it was just us, bodies aligning in the alcove between romance and mystery. That night, under the covers of his bed, with sheets smelling of lavender and him, we mapped each other with reverent hands, whispers turning to moans that echoed our soul's quiet rebellion. But love, real and ragged, doesn't bloom without thorns. A week later, the first crack appeared. Jordan's phone buzzed during dinner, spaghetti eye-charred on the edges. A valiant effort at domesticity. He glanced at the screen, color draining from his face. It's my parents, he said, voice tight. They're visiting next month. From back home. Back home meant conservative roots in rural Indiana, the kind where family dinners ended in prayers for wayward sons. I watched him pace the kitchen, phone clutched like a grenade. They don't know, he confessed, sinking into a chair. About Ben's truth, or mine. And now, with us. I can't lie anymore. But telling them, it could shatter everything. The weight of it settled over us like fog rolling in from the lake. I pulled him close, murmuring promises into his hair, but doubt gnawed at me. Was I ready for the fallout? Elmwood thrived on whispers, gossip about the queer kid who'd fled to the city, the mechanic seen holding hands at the county fair. My job at the garage, run by old man Harlan with his faded Trump sticker on the truck, suddenly felt like a minefield. We pushed through, stealing moments amid the tension, picnics by the creek where we'd skip stones and share dreams of a life unapologetic, drives in a Mustang with windows down and his hand on my thigh. Romance wove through the fear, binding us tighter. He'd leave notes in my toolbox, scribbled quotes from Whitman about the body electric, and I'd surprise him with wildflowers tucked into his bookstore register, petals as bold as our secret. Yet suspense coiled like a spring. One evening, as we grilled burgers in my backyard, flames licking the dusk, headlights swept the fence. A truck idled too long at the curb, Harlan's deputy nephew, eyes narrowed in the rear view. Jordan stiffened beside me, spatula frozen mid-flip. They know, he whispered. Not question. Paranoia. Or truth. The nights grew restless, our lovemaking fierce and desperate, as if we could outrun the gathering storm. The breaking point came on a rain-lashed Friday. Jordan's parents arrived early, tires crunching gravel unannounced. I was at the garage, elbow deep in a transmission, when my phone lit up with his text. They're here. Help, heart slamming. I raced home, mud splashing my jeans, arriving to find him on the porch, face ashen, his mother's voice carrying sharp through the screen door, accusations about his unnatural solitude. Ben's death a punishment from on high. I burst in without knocking, dripping and defiant, claiming a forgotten tool in the kitchen as cover. But eyes locked, his parents' shock mirroring my resolve. Alex is a friend, Jordan stammered, but his hand sought mine under the table, squeezing like a lifeline. The dinner that followed was a minefield of veiled barbs, his father's Bible quotes clashing with my forced smiles. Under the table, our knees touched, a silent vow. That night, after they retired to the guest room, Jordan slipped into my house, soaked from the downpour, collapsing into my arms with sobs that racked us both. I told them, he gasped between kisses, fierce and tear-streaked. About Ben. About me. About us. The words hung, a declaration of war. And in the dim lamplight, I saw the cost etched in his trembling frame, the exile looming, the family fracturing. But as we clung together, bodies entwined against the chill, something shifted. No longer hiding. Our love burned brighter, unshadowed. We'll build our own, I promised, tracing the lines of his face like a map to home. One story at a time, the days blurred into a whirlwind of reckoning. His parents left in a huff of slammed doors and tearful ultimatums. But Jordan stood firm, voice steady as he waved goodbye. Elmwood murmured, stares at the market. Harlan's gruff, Watch yourself. Boy at the garage, but we faced it hand in hand. The Mustang our chariot through the fray. I quit the garage, opening a mobile repair service with Jordan's encouragement. Tools in the truck bed beside stacks of books he insisted I read on the road. Suspense lingered in small ways. A homophobic slur scrawled on his store window. A late-night call from an old friend warning of town hall whispers about family values. We weathered it with late-night drives to the city, dancing in hidden bars where acceptance flowed like whiskey, and quiet mornings tangled in sheets, planning a future etched in permanence, a commitment ceremony under the oaks, rings forged for Mustang scrap. Climax crashed on Halloween Eve, the town alive with jack-o'-lantern grins and costumed kids. We hosted a small gathering at the bookstore, friends from the fringes, queers who trickled into Elmwood like wayward leaves. Laughter echoed off the shelves. But as midnight tolled, the door burst open. Harlan's nephew, 3 sheets to the wind and flanked by red-faced buddies, stormed in, slurring venom about deviants corrupting the town. Fists clenched. Jordan stepped forward, but I was there first, wrenched from my pocket a makeshift shield. The brawl was chaos shouts, shattering glass, a chair splintering under weight. Punches landed, blood mixing with spilled punch. But we fought not just for survival, but for the right to love without apology. Neighbors poured in, some jeering, others shielding Mrs. Hargrove, of all people, wielding her umbrella like Excalibur. Sirens wailed distant, and as the instigators fled into the night, Jordan pulled me close amid the wreckage, lips brushing my split brow. "We're unbreakable," he whispered, and in that shattered sanctuary, surrounded by allies we'd never known we had, I believed him. Healing came slow, like rust yielding to polish. The store reopened with rainbow ribbons in the windows, donations pouring in from unlikely corners. Harlan grumbled, but kept his distance, and whispers turned to wary nods. We rebuilt, stronger, Jordan shelves stocked with stories of queer resilience. My truck emblazoned with a subtle pride flag sticker. Through it all, our love deepened, roots twisting into Elmwood soil, transforming judgment into quiet acceptance. One spring evening, under a sky stitched with stars, we exchanged vows by the creek, simple words wrapped in wildflowers, rings glinting like promises kept. "You fixed more than my car that day," Jordan said, tears tracing paths down his cheeks. "You fixed me. Us." And as we walked home, hands laced, the
It's usually
world
just a
felt
loose connection
vast
here.
and kind.
Easy to miss,
A
but
canvas
I'll
for the
show you.
stories we'd write together, page by tenor page,